Well, welcome back to the Writing Craft podcast, you guys. I'm your host, Jenna.
And I'm your host, Holly.
And today we are helping all of those baby writers actually start writing their book because 2025 is right around the corner, or right now, depending on when you're watching this video and when we upload it. So it's time to start writing that book that you have always said that you're going to write and you haven't yet. And we're here to do a little kick in the pants for you.
Yeah, it's time to stop making excuses. Stop calling yourself a wannabe or aspiring writer. Start writing, because guess what? The second you start writing, you are a writer.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that I never understood when someone's like, oh, I'm a wannabe writer, I'm an aspiring writer. And so many people end up saying that when they actually have written something. And I'm like, no, you're already qualified as a writer. And the only people who don't end up qualifying are people who have an idea in their head and they've never actually put pen to paper or written down their ideas or even tried to start the novel. So we're here to tell you that the world deserves your book. The world is waiting for it, and that it's time for you to go and actually get started and cross that little wannabe or aspiring off the beginning of your title. You're already a writer. Now act like it. Start doing it.
Congratulations. Now it's time to work.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's one of the things, too, that so many people, they're like, oh, I'm a wannabe writer, I'm an aspiring writer, and then they never actually start writing because they realize, oh, it's actually, like, work, and it's easier just to daydream about my stuff, which, granted, if that's the route that you want to take, great, but I don't think you're clicking on this podcast because that's actually what you want. I think you want someone to motivate you and kick you in the butt and tell you that, yes, it is work, and it's not going to necessarily be easy, and there's a lot of things for you to learn, but 1, it's worth it. 2, your story is worth it. 3, you are worth it. And why bother waiting? Like, it's a brand new year. The world's half the time ending anyways around you. You might as well always do what you've always wanted to do.
Channel those apocalyptic feels. and the thing is, I think even for people who are already writing, there's that fear of writing, quote unquote, the project, right? Like the one that you're dreaming of. I know that I personally spent a lot of time sort of fiddling around, and, some of that was learning, which was good. But there have been many times where I'll know this is the project I really want to be working on. And instead of just getting into it, I will put it off and I will put it off because, like, I don't know if I'm good enough yet to do this. I can't, touch this brilliant idea with my grubby hands at this point. But, like it's never actually going to be something unless you start. And I think the biggest hurdle is, just sitting down at your computer or your notebook and starting writing. And the biggest thing you have to acknowledge is that it isn't going to be perfect. It is going to be far from perfect when you start.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't edit a blank page. That's what everyone ends up saying. And I agree with you. I remember distinctly, almost a decade ago when I first got the idea for Spaceborne, my queer space opera, and then the Viking book, which I'm currently working on right now. I had the Viking idea first, and then I had the idea for Spaceborne afterwards. And the reason that I had pivoted to Spaceborne was because initially I was like, oh, the Viking book is going to be just a little bit too big to work on right now. And so I was like, oh, space, I'll mess around with that for a little bit, not really like fully committing to it yet. But then it grabbed me in a chokehold. And it was only once I was in that chokehold that I realized, oh, this book is way bigger, more scientifically involved. I have to do so much more research. I took an astronomy class in college.
I love that.
Specifically to figure out whether or not my hypotheses were correct or, possible to be able to base some of the scientific technologies of the book off of. I literally had a one-on-one with my professor who works partially at my school that I had at the time, and then also at the Carl Sagan Institute, just to be like, does this make sense scientifically to be in my novel? And he's actually gone and been credited for helping other sci-fi authors with their novels. Didn't know that when I started taking his class. Yeah, so it was very cool, but I was like, oh crap, this book is way too big for me, and I was so scared to finish it or complete it, and I kept rewriting it, reworking on it, because I was like, no, I have to make it better. And I was doing that partially because I knew I wasn't good enough yet to have written that book the way it needed to be. But it was through the process of rewriting, getting betas on it, working on it, that I became such a better writer. But I was always like, oh, but it's not done, because if it's done, then that means that I can't go back and fix it later because I don't feel like I'm good enough to have actually written the book correctly because it's so big. And then simultaneously, I was also lagging on finishing it because I didn't want to go back to the Viking book because I also felt like I wasn't ready to do this big of a project either. And now it's basically become 5 books in one, serialized. That's huge. I'm at like the midpoint I originally outlined, and it's already over 200,000 words. That's how big this book is, because it's literally multiple books in one. But I had to get over the fear of, I'm not good enough. I can't do this on my own. I need help. I need outside validation. I need all these other things to be in right circumstances for me to write, or for me to begin writing this type of story. Oh, what if I write things that are just easier? And I would come up with easier, quote unquote, book ideas, work on those for a little bit, and then abandon them, because I knew in the back of my head that that's not what I was supposed to be working on at that time. That was not what I was called to be writing. And I knew that the scarier that the goal is that I have, the scarier of the project that I want to work on is, and the scarier of the book idea itself, the more I'm going to advance as a writer the second I actually start becoming a writer and write the damn story.
Yeah, and that's a really good thing to discuss, that whole process and how things change as you're writing and as you're working, because I don't think that ever does change. Like, you don't ever get to a point in your writing where you go, all right, this is the perfect time to write this. I'm going to sit down and write it, and you do it, and it's great, and you love it, and you never have to look back on it again, and you're just like, yep, that was perfect, we're good. Because I did this thing that was with my first book that I published, A Time When Demons. I did know that that wasn't going to be the perfect project. And that was actually kind of a good thing to do, because I loved it, but I knew it wasn't like the big one. But I wanted to just get something out there, and I wanted to go through the process and learn. And so I put an entire book out that was a learning experience, which is kind of scary, right? Because I know it's not like the best thing that I could possibly be doing, but it was clean. It's a good little story. It's a good YA. It's, it's neat and it's tidy. And I got that out there, and now, people read it and they're reviewing it, and luckily it's been positive. But at the same time, I put it out there knowing that I have to do this just to try and see how this does, while I then, build myself up to work on my bigger projects. And yeah, like, would I go back and redo it and make it so much bigger and fancier? Like, yes. And I would do that with every project. I know that that's going to come up with my future projects too, right? Like, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be the best timing. And you're never going to be like, that was the most brilliant thing I ever wrote, because, a month later, you'll have grown as a writer. You will have grown by writing that. And then you're going to want to go back and change it. So and that's why it's so important to start and just jump in, because it's always going to be messy. It's going to be messy, and you need to learn to put your work out in the world, start receiving feedback, start getting those readers, people betaing, people editing and going, oh, okay, I love parts of this and other people love parts of it. I don't like parts of this and need to work on it. And, other people agree with that and are going to tell me where I need to fix things. And that's how you grow as a writer. And you can't grow and put work out into the world until you can't grow until you actually put something out there to grow from.
Yeah, and that's exactly it too. And it's, there's a difference of, depending on your publishing path, or if you're publishing at all. Some people do want to just, write fan fiction. Some people do want to just write for themselves and never share it anywhere. Some people want to go traditional publishing. People want to do self. Some people want to do indie. Whatever your path is for what you decide to actually do with the story afterwards, you can kind of figure that out later if you don't already know, or if it's stressing you out. But the actual act of just writing, even if it's just for you, you're getting all of those little voices in your head out. You're telling them, hey, this is a safe place for you to exist, even if it's just for me. Because one of the main things that I always come back to all the time in my life, and when I think about, I'm not motivated to do this thing, and one of the things that always motivates me is the fact that regret is probably one of the biggest things that people in their old age deal with. And it's that they didn't do this, and there's tons of people who wanted to write a book, and there's tons of people who want to do this, and unless you're at the point where you physically cannot write anymore, and you can't remember stuff because of things like dementia, you can't go and make your fingers literally type on a computer or write things down, no matter what your age is up until that point, you still have the ability. And even people who are on their deathbeds, they start dictating stories. So as long as you're still alive and you're still somewhat cognitive, there's a way for you to get your story out there and to not be faced with all that regret. There's so many people who started in their 40s, 50s, 60s later in life on projects that they're like, hey, I at least did this. And there's other people who end up dying and they're like, man, I wish I had written the book. Man, I wish I had taken that chance. And so many people, I forgot what the stat is, but there's a certain stat out there, it's fucking 80-90% of people, I think that they want to write a book.
I've heard this. It's pretty high.
It's an insane stat, but then people don't end up doing it. And here's the thing too that I always come back to is you might try writing and you fucking hate it. Like you just might. You might go, hey, I've always had this book idea. Let me try writing it there. And you might sit in front of the keyboard, look at that blank screen, and type out some stuff and be like, this is garbage. I hate this entire experience. I don't like doing it. Yeah, it's hard. And yeah, I just kind of like imagining it in my head better. I don't really want to share it with anyone. And I'm not going to bother doing this anymore. But guess what? Then you're not dying at some point in your life with the regret of, oh, I wish I had done that. Because how dumb would it be is you're dying on your deathbed and you're like, I wish I had written that book. But then another timeline you was looking at you and being like, actually, we tried that in our 20s and I hated it. It was the worst experience of our life. We gave up on it. You're fine. But like you're literally there dying thinking that you're having the worst experience ever because you regretted not writing that book. And then you know, alternate universe you who actually tried writing was like, actually that was ass. That could be a complete and utter experience that you do have, but it's not, you're not going to know until you try, right?
And that's scary, right? Like if you're holding this dream in your head and you might not want to sit down and learn that you hate it because then, you know, oh no, what have I been doing? But it's kind of like, you know, that pulling off of the Band-Aid, right? It's like when you, I don't know, like when you have to break up with someone or something, you don't want to do it, but like you can't move on with your life until you just do that. Like it sucks, but just do it. Find out if it's for you or not. And if it is for you, I think that you are far much more going to regret not writing the book versus writing a book that, you know, a month after you put it out into the world or, you know, just complete it for yourself that you go, oh, I don't like that and I could do better. You are still like by far going to regret it more if you never try. And then if, you know, if it's not for you, you are never going to be able to move on with your life and find other dreams and find other ways to channel those ideas. Like maybe your ideas are fit for like, maybe you want to get into like acting. Maybe you want to build characters and do acting and stuff like that. Maybe you just want to like play The Sims and build your little worlds in The Sims, you know, become like a gamer online. There's so many different ways that an interest in storytelling can take you if you are not a writer. Like, you know, all is not lost if you try and you hate it and it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and I think that's too that's what you're saying is so fucking crucial right now. And it's that, yeah, you might be scared of, okay, what if I try this and I don't like it, or I don't know what I don't like what I created, or I find out that this isn't the medium for me. But one of my favorite movies of all time is Tangled. And that's one of the whole points of it, is that you get to find a new dream. Like once you've accomplished one dream, you get to go and do the next thing. And I mean, that might be even some people's experience. They loved writing one book and they were one-hit wonders. They put the book out there and then they've had their dream. They don't really have any other stories in them. And they're like, okay, well, crap, what now? And for some people that can be so daunting. And I think that that's not the way that we should be thinking about it. We should be thinking about it as, okay, I accomplished that dream. What's next? And even for writers who end up deciding that this is the path that they want to go down for the rest of their lives or for however long it takes them, they put out one book. And then they're like, that's not it. For people who actually become authors, become writers, they become so entrenched in the world, they have so many book ideas. They're like, okay, I put out the one book. That was my dream, to get that one book out there, no matter what path it was, whether it was fan fiction, whether it was traditional publishing, self-publishing, indie, whatever it is. The book is done, it's out there, or it's sitting on my computer and I'm satisfied with it and it's only for me. Then you get to go find a new story. You get to go find a new dream. You get to go work on another project. And that's when you really go from just being a casual writer to now you're pumping out multiple books. You're either publishing, you know, multiple things, and, you know, you're going down the path of publishing, or you have multiple docs on your computer that you just love and adore, and they're only meant for you, but now they get to exist. And I think that's one of the most biggest tragedies of people who say they want to be writers and then never even give it a shot, is that all those worlds die with you. All those worlds stay in your head and they're never existing anywhere. They only exist as part of you. And we are just a finite creature who have ideas for stories that are infinite, and not sharing them, not putting them and creating them into this reality ensures that when we go, those all go with us. And I think that's just one of the biggest tragedies, is dying with untold stories within you. And no matter what path you end up deciding that takes, whether it's, hey, I want to write novels. Hey, I want to be an actor. Hey, I want to play on The Sims. Hey, I want to go and, which is basically just adult Barbies, may I say?
Yeah.
And we love it. Big Sims fan over here too.
The best.
But you know, there's people who want to be script writers specifically. There's people who want to go and do like YouTube skits or mini films and different things like that. There's so many different ways you can do storytelling, even in music. but the act of creating something, the act of doing storytelling, this is one of the oldest sort of careers or jobs in the entire world. A lot of people say sex workers is the first one, but if you think about storytellers, we had storytellers from the beginning of, time, with cave markings on the walls, people who would look up at the stars and tell stories about what they were seeing in outer space, trillions of light years away from us. And it's been integral for our existence to be able to communicate with each other things and ideas that are inside of our brain, because we know once we're gone, if we don't tell other people about it, it's gone forever. And God, I just love storytelling so much. And it's time for you to also decide that this is your time to start telling all of those stories for yourself too.
I think that that's a really good lead into getting into another reason why some people might be afraid of writing, especially right now, like afraid of getting into it. Just to start by saying what you're talking about, cave paintings and stuff, art and storytelling, these are things that are so integral to the human experience and like what we are and what we can produce. You see like non-human animals be able to produce art in certain ways, but it is really a uniquely human thing that we do. And I think a lot of people right now, whether you haven't started putting pen to paper yet or you have just started, a lot of people might be feeling dissuaded right now because of AI taking over. And there's sort of two things that I think we can get into here. One being that you shouldn't be afraid, and two being don't do it. if you're if you're a aspiring writer who is going, oh, well, maybe my stuff isn't like the way I want it to be, but I can plug all my ideas into AI and get that, pushed out, then that's how I can write. So this is a whole can of worms, right? But, it's important to touch on because I think we have a variety of stuff going on in this field right now, right?
Yeah, well, I think too, this is the first time as well in human history where something other than humans has been able to tell a story. But the thing is that AI in its current form can only create a story based off of other people having already created a story. It can only write because we teach it to write, because we feed it data that we have already created. So
stolen data, generally.
Yeah, it's just the stolen data and stolen stories of other people. And I think that's why it's even more important for more writers who are genuinely writing themselves and not using AI. It's more important than ever that we get our stories out there, because when people actually, as consumers, can put side by side genuine story and AI, and the more that people read, the more that people are able to just get exposure to the real thing versus the fake bullshit that ChatGPT wants to spit out at us, the more that they can see what the genuine thing is, the more that they can appreciate it, the more that they can have this knowledge of this was made by a real person based off their real life experiences, the ideas that came from their soul and heart and brain, versus this is the accumulative data that this person has decided to scrape together off of just taking the bullshit off the internet for free and then just regurgitating it in a new way. People are going to be able to tell. Right now we're in this age of, okay, well, let's see if we can just cut all the creatives out of project and still have people actually consume the media, which for the most part hasn't been working. I don't know if you saw that Coca-Cola commercial. Coca-Cola sales tanked after doing that Coca-Cola commercial.
I was wondering about this actually, because I don't see ads that often. Like I don't watch a lot of, like I don't use streaming platforms really. I'll watch YouTube, but I'll like block the ads and stuff. But my mom and I have been rewatching The Office on Amazon. And so we're seeing ads because even if you pay for Prime, you get ads still. And that has been coming on. And every time I see it, I lose my mind over it. So I'm glad I'm not the only one.
I only saw it because it was on Twitter and people were joking and laughing about it because it's just such a mess. But it didn't do anything for their sales, and they did multiple different versions and they tested it on the public and it did not do well, which I'm, glad for. But also that just makes sense. Like people can so obviously tell what is AI and what is not, and they're trying to make it more and more lifelike.
They even had a little fine print on it saying, created by Magic AI.
Yeah.
Oh, guys, no.
Yeah,
not the way.
Even if you just look at it, like for the most part right now, you can just tell what AI is AI. Oh, and there's some parts where, if they have a really good AI, it blurs the line a little bit, but it's still so soulless. And for anybody who actually has any ability to tell honestly, any ability for critical thinking skills or actually knows what real art looks like, then they can easily tell like that's AI. And it honestly just screams that certain companies are cheap as fuck. Like it doesn't like impress anybody. Like I get more impressed and more amazed when I see incredible art associated with a brand, because I'm like, okay, you paid a smaller artist and probably paid a decent chunk of change to a smaller artist, and that that makes that brand more special to me. But when I see AI, like, I'm gonna try and be vague here because it's regarding my day job. But for my day job, we do a lot of branding stuff, and I was like, oh, you know, we have a different office that's starting somewhere else. I'm supposed to do, you know, a meeting with them to talk about their branding and stuff like that for their recruitment and all of those things. And then they gave me their AI logo. They're like, this is my brand. I did it for free. It's so great. I don't need your help. I don't need to pay you. And I'm just like, literally their logo at the bottom has just squiggle marks that are like kind of letters that just go, you know, like in a squiggle, because it's supposed to be where a tagline for a business is. And there's just random dots around the logo from where they didn't even bother to like Photoshop those things out of it. It's a cool concept for a logo, but it's his concept that instead of hiring an actual person to do, even just for super cheap on Fiverr, he just ran through an AI program and got in 5 seconds, and it looks like it. And when I have my chat with him, that 101 with him, I'm going to tell him, like, it makes your brand look fucking cheap, and no one's going to think that you're an actual business.
And like, that's the thing. And that's the really positive thing that you can take away from this as like someone who wants to get into the creative industry, but is feeling like kind of put off by that and daunted by how this is coming out. Like we had, I forget the name of the quote unquote publisher, who has promised to put out 8,000 AI books in the next year. Like some people see that and the immediate reaction is like, oh no, you know, they're going to fill the market with this. I'm never going to get published. Like people are 100% going to know. And it's kind of cool actually, and speaks even more to the fact that creativity is such a human endeavor that like we do know, even when it is really good AI. Like there's a museum here in Montreal and they are doing a witch event right now. And I saw their posters and at first glance, I'm like, oh, that's pretty. And then like a split second later, I'm like, oh, that's AI. That's 100% AI. And I looked at it and it's terrible because especially as a museum, right? Like you should have some integrity of like preserving the arts and stuff. And I looked it up and people have been defacing the posters and being like, you know, fuck AI, putting stickers on it, and their social media is full of it. And they're like, well, it wasn't entirely AI. Like our designer worked with AI. Like, no, you know what? That's art theft. And people know. People who aren't in the industry know. We know when something is human and when it's not. And what I have told people who have been scared, because I've had a lot of friends who are like, great, this is, you know, the death of the art world. All the artists are screwed. That's it. You know, writers aren't going to get jobs. Visual artists aren't going to get jobs. Like, you know what? All this is going to do is elevate the work that's created by humans. So it's more valuable than ever for you to be putting stuff out. Like we need more human voices. And that's one of the reasons why we started our human based challenge, like the Order of the Written Word, that speaking of, you know, logos, Jenna did a beautiful logo for if you're looking at the visuals here. So, you know, that's what you get from a real artist. And we had tons of people join, very excited about putting their words out into the world. And that's what we want to do. And that's what we need. And that's what readers want. Readers don't want to read AI. They want to read what you wrote, like Jenna said, from your soul, from your personal experience, your unique personal experience. Like we all have personal experiences that are completely different from everyone else in the world. Even if you experience the same thing, you experience it in a different way. So you are very valuable right now as a creative voice, like more so than ever.
Yeah, and I mean, even people who don't, and like they can't really tell with AI, what I've noticed is that even when it's the images or if it's the written word, no matter which way the AI is being kind of generated, it gives people who don't even understand or aren't even haters of AI, when they look and consume it, it gives them like the uncanny valley. It gives them that weird, like it's kind of human, but not quite. If you don't know what the uncanny valley kind of feeling is, it's basically where we as humans are kind of trained that if something kind of looks human, but we know it's not, it kind of gives us that weird, icky, like scared kind of feeling. You
can't describe it. It's just strange.
Yeah, and it turns a lot of people off. And that's what honestly AI has given people, because it's kind of like human, but then it's not, and it puts us on edge. It literally gives us the fight or flight instinct a lot of the times because everything feels so soulless. And even if you're not like a religious or spiritual person, you don't really believe in a soul, like you have to think that there's obviously something important about our brains, that it cannot be fully understood in the way that we currently have, you know, our quote unquote AI, even though it's not actually intelligent and it's not, you know, like it's definitely artificial, but it's not really intelligent. But and with what Holly's saying too about art's going to become more and more valuable, mark my words, what we're going to see is we're going to see a huge, massive company say, oh, we can, you know, lay off all our creative teams because we want to use AI, and then we bring all the AI in, and then their sales tank because 1, boycotts, 2, uncanny valley feeling, and 3, because people are like, hey, I don't like this anymore. You got rid of all of the artists. It doesn't have any heart or soul anymore. It doesn't matter to me as much anymore. And then everything slowly peters off, and they're like, shit, we need artists back. But for the most part, any artist worth their stock, if they find out a company has worked with AI, promoted AI in the past, and now they're like, crap, we need our artists back, not many artists are going to want to go back to working with them. And what they're going to do is going to have to hike up their prices if you want to be able to work with us again. Like, if you're going to have to pay penance, you're going to have to sign contracts saying that you don't want to go and use AI. There's already tons of strikes with, I think the Voice Actors Guild is striking right now, and against any company.
Yeah, that's another area that's been really, you know, starting to be overrun. It's terrible.
Yeah, and it's like, and I mean, even with actors too, they're trying to make it so that if you ever work as like an extra on a film, that they can use you as an extra in every single film that they ever want to, and CGI you into it. And I'm like, okay, well, where do everyone work after that? I mean, there's no jobs anymore. But even beyond that, once they figure out that, hey, all of our stuff is soulless, no one wants to consume it anymore, now they're all going to, you know, indie publishers. They're all going to self-publishing. They're all going to indie films that don't use AI, and we're losing out on big shares because we're not willing to actually, you know, not be dicks. Then,
well, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens further with the fallout with HarperCollins. How they've been reaching out to their authors and be like, hey, we'll pay you a $5,000 flat fee to use your novel to train AI. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, who's going to want to work with them?
Yeah. I mean, like, we're already kind of seeing just people being so fed up with so many different creative industries that have just become so toxic. And we've kind of always known that a lot of those big, you know, like the publishing industry, higher up, you know, big publishers, a lot of them are pretty toxic. We've known that now literary agencies are sometimes super toxic. We've known the music industry is a hellscape. So many things are coming out about both music and the movie industries, and now they're tacking AI on top of it and trying to get rid of the creative backbone of those industries.
It's like, just keep going, guys. Keep going.
Yeah, well, it's pushing so many people to go and become independent, because I follow tons of independent music artists who don't have a label, tons of people who are making their own smaller indie presses like Stygian, and just doing everything themselves because at the very least they can control what happens to them, versus going into these industries and getting just plowed over by absolute bullshit and then getting betrayed at the last second by AI and losing the soul of your work to something like that. And so we're going to see just a huge rise in people doing everything themselves, which means that, yeah, they have to pay, like, people have to pay a premium to a certain extent to be able to get the real thing going forward. And at least then it'll kind of line the pockets of, you know, artists and creatives and things like that. And the consumer is going to be willing to pay for it, or hopefully, more likely, those industries that had originally used AI, they're going to have to pay more for the premium real thing because they pissed everyone off.
Yeah. So rather than this being, you know, the worst time to start putting your work out in the world, it could very well be the best time. Like, I'm feeling pretty good about the way things are going, I have to say. And just having been to our first market as a small press in the last month, we had one interview, there was one press guy going around, and we got included like in a fairly big way in his article because we were talking about being against AI. Like, people are hungry for that. They're really hungry for, you know, that fighting back against it, and not, you know, not giving in, resisting.
Yeah. Well, I think too, we're seeing, I don't know, people are trying to say it's not the age of Aquarius that we just entered, but I'm very much so feeling like it's the age of Aquarius. If you guys don't know what that is, it's supposed to be sort of this age of enlightenment that we sort of enter as a collective species, where just so many different things begin to change. And we had a big move astrologically into like Aquarius season, and it's just a bunch of astrological stuff has been happening, and everyone said 2025 is going to be crazy, and it's going to continue till like 2035. And so we're seeing so many major revolutions in industries, in politics, and just so many different things. And I think that this is going to be an artist revolution is going to happen. I think so many people are going to go, you know what? Screw the big 5 publishers, or however many there are left. Screw the, big music industry. Screw all of these different things. We're all going to go indie. And as soon as those things are able to be massively not disrupted, well, I mean, mass disruption, yes, but massively distributed, and more people are able to figure out about it because of things like TikTok, which hopefully does not get banned in January.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I think as well that they're trying to ban TikTok is because of the spread of independent artists like that, and because, obviously bigger corporations have such a chokehold on our industry because everything is, and chokehold on our politics and everything like that, no matter what country you live in, just because they make money and they can buy anything they want. But hopefully that's not the case, and we're able to, or at the very least there's an alternative to it, because I think we're going to enter an artist revolution. I think so many other revolutionary, just big, major changes are coming down the pipeline for all of us. And I just have to hope that obviously that change is a good thing, and that, obviously so many different life experiences are going to come out of that, and it's going to inspire so many different stories, and hopefully just the most beautiful pieces of art and different things like that. I always think about, I don't know if you know The Fourth Turning at all. I think we talked about this in the previous episode, maybe.
Yeah, this sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's basically every 4 generations / between 80 and 100 years, we go through the same cycles again and again. So last time we were in the 1920s, we had the Spanish flu, then we had COVID, we had world wars and everything like that. But then
certain things repeat themselves.
Yeah, and we're at that point again. We're at the 2020s. But, after all those things happened, we had a huge surge of creative, just influx. We had
it's a renaissance.
Yeah, we had a huge renaissance, basically. And I think we're getting towards a time where we can have that again. And it's time, if you have any sort of creative pursuit that you're passionate about, or any sort of inkling, you might as well try it and get in on it while it's hot, and get on it while there's this huge, resurgence, and you can find community, because, obviously a lot of change does come with a lot of upheaval. It comes with a lot of just, traumatic things, to be honest with you, and you're going to need community for that, and writing community is one of the best places to be, one. But then two, any artistic community, of course, it can be toxic like any other place. It can be toxic like the industry, figureheads can be, but at the same time you can find lifelong friends like me and Holly. You can find different things to sort of spark joy in your life when other things don't seem so joyful anymore, and that couldn't be more powerful, especially in just a time of so much uncertainty. And for things that you create, like your art, that can be certainty for other people. That can be the warm hug that they need when they're having their own personal dark night of the soul moment, and that, I think, is one of the other reasons that art is going to be so important. So no matter what sort of art form you were thinking about delving into, or whether or not you try for your dream of being a writer and you end up deciding that it's not for you and you let it go, you get to find a new dream that can bring someone else a passion. Because I think if you have any sort of inkling for storytelling, you are an artist at heart, and there's some sort of way that the stories need to get out of you in some sort of capacity. And if you do decide to share those stories, it can help other people. And I think that there's nothing greater about being a writer than helping other people feel seen and comforted and loved, when honestly our world is not very comforting and not very loving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, just through this past November of doing the writing challenge, and, this sort of downfall of NaNoWriMo, how they've keep digging themselves deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into that pit, asking, gotta love that week where they sent 2 emails out in 1 week asking for money because of changes they made that no one wanted them to make. Seeing that change, people finally, like, that being the last straw. Like, for me, there was so much other stuff going on with them, but the AI thing was just like the final straw for me to get out. And then immersing myself into this new community that rose up through our challenge. We wound up having over 400 people, which was super exciting. And I've been looking at the messages and the chats, because when a community is so big, it's hard to keep up on it all, especially when you're sort of managing it and stuff. But going back and trying to see what I can of what people have been talking about and receiving DMs, this is a really, I think we have a really positive time coming up. I feel it. I feel that there's sort of change in the air, and that there are a lot of artists, independent artists, who are just sick of the way things have been. And not only are we going to make things better for ourselves, but we are going to be the ones who are laying the groundwork for new artists, new writers who want to come into these worlds and have a good experience. And there's a lot of platforms being built for that, a lot of communities, and they are great spaces. Like, we had moderators set up. We like had to do nothing. Everyone was just, kind, helpful, sweet. I think we had one report that was nothing. It was barely anything at all, and both people were fine in the end. So it's a great space, great energy, and I definitely welcome anyone in who's not certain about their writing. There's a lot of support going on right now, not just in our community, but you can find communities everywhere. A lot of them popped up, especially like after NaNoWriMo. If you just look on Twitter and look through, like there are going to be people saying alternatives, I need communities. So it's an amazing time to start putting your work out there, join a community, get feedback, and make some friends who are just as creative as you.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better time to start with a new thing than the new year, because so many people are just so energized by it being something new and flashy, and like we have so many hopes and stuff for that new year. So it's just one of those things where there's so many other people who are going to start partaking in all these other creative pursuits, and I don't know. Yeah, it feels like it's the time for it. And I think you perfectly summed it up with people are sick of the way that things are. And not to get too obviously political on here, though we are aligned in a lot of things. If you saw anything about like recently the South Korean stuff, where we're currently doing right now, the president there tried to enact martial law, and literally within like 3 hours, the people said no, stormed the parliament, and got their Congress people, like literally like hoisted them over the gates, because they're like, we're not doing this again. They went through that, I think in the 80s, the last time that ever had happened. And they obviously are so close to North Korea. They know what a dictatorship looks like. They know what it's like when, fascism rules. They know what it's like to go and deal with absolute bullshit. And they said, absolutely the fuck not. And they worked their asses off to go and fix that. And I think we're going to see that in every sort of political, social, artistic, scientific, spiritual way, any sort of way. We're going to see people saying, I'm sick and tired of the way that things are. I want something different. And they're going to be looking for stories. They're going to be looking for art. They're going to be looking for things that aren't AI. They're going to be looking for ways to also just get the weight of the world off of their shoulders. And they're going to want to go and do things like write a book, create a new indie film. They're going to want to go and start new things for themselves, because we're seeing time and time again that leaders in our industries are corrupt. We're seeing things with our politicians being corrupt. We're seeing things with just so much widespread hatred and fear and all of these other things, and they're all going to want to funnel it into a release, which is being creative or consuming creative media. They're going to want that escapism. They're going to want to feel heard and seen and held. And those are all things that stories, and no matter what way you get your story out there, whether it's through books or art or film, whatever it is, all of that is a way of storytelling. And creative arts are, honestly, no matter what path again you take, it's all storytelling, just through different mediums, even lyrics and songs, and the way that you have music and films. Everything is you taking an idea from your head and then giving it to other people, saying that I feel the way you feel, I understand what you're going through. And that's why we always see these big renaissance that happen after just horrible things happen in our world, or big upheavals happen, and these big revolutionary thoughts and feelings always happen after some of the darkest times. Because if you know story arcs at all, you always have that sort of midpoint, horrible thing happens, and then you have that dark night of the soul, and then the hero goes and slays the dragon in the end. And I think we're hopefully going to see that slaying of the dragon very soon, and we're going to have a lot of that artistic renaissance come out of all of this bullshit that we're dealing with. At least I hope.
I think so. I think so. You see this happen over and over in the world, and even on a sort of small scale, you can see this in neighborhoods. Whenever you see rundown neighborhoods, artists and writers come in. They're the first ones who come in to rundown neighborhoods to try and beautify things. Then unfortunately, the next step is they get gentrified. That always happens, but that's the cycle of life, because then the gentrified neighborhood is going to become a rundown neighborhood, and the artists are going to come back. And I always feel like that's kind of a good example of how art works on a larger scale, art and writing. And I think another thing to think of is, and I think about this often as a writer who writes things like fantasy. All of my stuff is very fantastical. I don't have I don't include politics in my writing. I don't include politics in my online presence, though obviously I have personal opinions. And as a writer who's like that, sometimes you can feel like maybe I should be doing something more. Maybe I should be doing something political with my writing. And you don't have to, because just by writing and putting art out into the world, that is your own kind of politics, your own kind of revolution, because you are helping people. You are making the world a better place just by adding your voice to it. And art and literature are so, so important, especially in these hard times, because like when things are tough and people are stressed, that is, like Jenna said, that's your escape. So if you were putting that out in the world, whether you are saying something political, making a stance, making, nonfiction, writing that sort of thing, which is amazing, you don't have to still be making a huge difference.
Claps.
Welcome to my TED Talk. I feel like we've been both like standing on our soapboxes today, but it's very good.
Well, I think that what you summed it up perfectly there is that just by creating, like, you're doing something, your own little mini revolution. And this thing too is that, like, when I say revolution, I'm not talking about necessarily anything political. I'm not talking necessarily about anything on such a wide, grand scale, though of course that'd be great. But if the revolution is just in yourself, if it's just you making a change in your life and saying, I have always wanted to have this dream of being an author, and I have never actually given into that dream and let myself explore that possibility for myself, that might be your revolution. Your revolution might be that you go and start pumping out book after book after book. It might be just you write the one book, you decide that, hey, that's all I've got in me. I'm that one-hit wonder who leaves the document on their computer for all ages, but at least I did it, and now I can go chase a new dream. A revolution doesn't have to be some big, huge, massive change on a grand scale. It can be just for you, and it might be completely turning your life around. You do one of those, I changed my life in 6 months type of videos, and your skin is clear, your hair is glossy, you're having the greatest experience of your life, and that's great and dandy for you. But it might just be that you gave into a dream, you allowed yourself to explore a possibility for yourself, and you decided whether or not that was for you or not. One of the things that I am kind of like getting ready and planning for 2025 is to kind of be like, hey, I've wanted to do certain things for so long, and I always hold myself back because I never feel like I'm good enough, because I never feel like it's my time, because I always feel like I can point fingers and blame other things for why I didn't accomplish the stuff that I do. But then you realize you're just pointing at a bunch of different mirrors of a different version of you from the past who didn't make any different decisions than what you're making now. And that maybe that revelation is just me literally going and realizing I'm just pointing at myself, and then I should turn around and look in just a single mirror and then go, oh, I'm the problem. And that sometimes literally it only takes like a small mind shift in yourself to begin to realize that, hey, I can be the thing that changes my own life. I can be the thing that actually goes and gets the story out there. Hey, I can be the creative person in my life for once. I've never created anything before, but I want to. And that's the thing, is that your dream is just a want to do something, and you never actually take the action on it. And that's all that, I think this podcast episode is asking you to do, is to take a chance on you. Take a chance on that dream. And if it doesn't work, okay, that's not so scary. You went and you did it, you tried it, and then you get to have a new thing that you get to go try and do. And that might be all your life is you're just trying new things and trying new things. And maybe that's the whole point of why you're here, is to go and try new things. And you might not have this one massive, sole purpose in your life is to write books, and you always imagined yourself doing it, but you never actually do it. Maybe your whole thing is that you're just meant to get your story out there in as many different mediums as possible, and you only do it for you. But in the process of doing all that, you're learning things about yourself. You're learning things about your ability to be a creative person. You're doing that revolution internally for yourself and for you. It doesn't have to be that big of a thing. You don't have to go and make it a career. You don't have to go and publish it. You don't have to go and make $1 bazillion doing it like you see some of those entrepreneurs do online. Maybe you just do it for you and only you. And that is perfectly fine. It's up to what you decide. And you might get inspiration by looking at other people who you see as a success and then going, I have to do what that person is doing to feel validated. It's not the point. The point is, what are you going to do for yourself to make you feel like yourself? What are you going to do for you to get all of this creative juices flowing? Because there's a story inside of you for a reason. And it might not be to write a book. It might be that that story needs to be in a song. It might be that that movie is actually a short film. But you'll never know unless you try.
Yes.
Welcome to my TED Talk.
That's the message. And it is scary. And as both of us are writers, we get it. We totally get it. Even, I think that a lot of us a lot of us who have been in this for a long time, we talk about like, oh, I've been writing ever since I could hold a pencil. Like I used to have that in my bio. I think I've changed it now because I was like, that sounds too trite. But it's true. I've always been writing. I've always been telling stories. I've always been reading. And I think it can be like daunting for some people to look at that and go, oh, but I wasn't doing that. You don't have to do that. And even for those of us who have been doing that, it's still scary. Like I spent let's say it again. I spent 2 decades working on one book because it was never, I never felt like I could finish it. It was never the perfect time. And I'm never going to do that again. But I did that. I spent so much time just like not putting anything out there and not even thinking that I could be a published author. I was like, no, this is my hobby. I'm not good enough. I love it. It never entered my head that I was going to publish because I thought I was more of a visual artist. I thought, okay, graphic novels I can do, but then I didn't think my visual art was really that good. And then suddenly it just hit me. I'm like, I need to write. Like, this is what I have been doing all along. Why am I not doing this properly? And I started. So there's all different levels to this, and you're always going to be afraid. You're always going to be afraid to some extent. So I think come to terms with that. Be kind to yourself. Understand that that's how it's going to be, but then do it anyway.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, like, one of those just random sayings that stuck with me this entire time since I first heard it years ago. But it's that, and I'm sure people have already heard this before, but if you haven't, you're, younger, you might not have. But being brave isn't the lack of fear. It's doing the thing even though you're scared. And that fear never goes away. Like, you're always going to be scared to start that new story. You're always going to be scared to put the book out there. You're going to be scared to kind of share it or query it or whatever it is that you're doing. But like, you don't grow unless you're doing the things that you're scared of, unless you decide to be brave and go after that thing anyways. And I usually, I think about this story that I heard where it's like, okay, you are standing at the edge of a cliff, and there's a cliff here and there's a cliff here, and down is just a steep drop into the Grand Canyon. And you're like, hey, I need to get across. Okay, well, what's motivating you to get across? Because if you're too scared of the drop, you're not gonna go over, and you're not gonna go over a tightrope. You're not gonna try and build a bridge. You're not gonna do anything because you're too scared of falling. But if you're motivated by the right thing, you could go over just the thinnest tightrope and balance yourself. But if you're motivated enough to get over there because you're scared more about losing whatever's on the other side, you will find a way to get across it. So if you're too scared of, what if people judge me? What if people say mean things about me? What if people don't like my story? What if the critiques are too harsh? What if I get negative reviews? If you're too scared of even just starting because you're afraid of all these things down the line, you're valuing the drop off that cliff more so than whatever's on the other side. And so you're looking down. That's why what they tell you when you're on a ledge and you're scared of heights, they say don't look down, because then you just slowly, your vision starts narrowing. You see black on the corner of your vision, and all you can see is the drop because you're so scared of it. You're not remembering what's on the other side. Because I guarantee you, if someone was like, hey, get over this bridge because you can get $1, people are like, my life's not worth $1 to go risk my life, or I'm going to drop in the Grand Canyon. But if they're like, hey, you have to get over the Grand Canyon real quick because your family's going to die if you don't, then you're really motivated to get over there, and you'll find a way, right? Like, where there's a will, there's a way. You'll get over there. But however, you're not even going to hear that your family's in danger if all you're doing is looking down and staring basically the barrel of the gun in the eyes, because all you can see is the drop into the Grand Canyon, because you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on everything that you're afraid of happening rather than focusing on all the good things that could happen. And that is oftentimes so many problems for creatives, is that we're so scared of the what if, that we never think about the good part of the what if. Okay, what if I get a negative review? What if someone finds their new favorite book and it's yours? Oh, I'm so scared of people judging me and saying mean things about me online. What if you find your future husband online? What if you find some best friends that you could ever have in your whole life because they did a cold email, like Holly did to me? Yeah. But like, you never know what's waiting on the other side of all of that fear that you have, and you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're thinking, oh, well, what if people judge me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess up the story? What if you never even try? Welcome to my TED Talk.
And you know what I can tell you? Is that, that thing of like, we always remember the negative thing more than the positive thing, like that sticks with us more. There's a certain point when you get used to, just that I can say from years of taking critique on my artistic endeavors, whether visual or written, there is actually, this is one thing that does change, I think. And I don't know if this is the same with you, Jenna, but like there is a point where the good ones do start meaning more. And that's a really fun point to reach, because I will have like one negative thing happen within like my publishing company or something like that. And I can immediately go, okay, I have a massive foundation of really positive experiences. And instead of my brain locking into that one negative thing, instead, I sort of feel comforted by all the positive experiences, all the community building, like the friends I've built, and it immediately washes away the negative thing and you can deal with it. So not only will you get to that point with your writing, and that's a really positive thing to look forward to, but that helps you with your life too, because as you write, you grow and you build community and you become, I think it can make you be a better person, or at least for you, it helps you deal with the world by learning to build community, take critique, and put your stuff out there, even though you're afraid.
Yeah, writing gives you opportunity like you wouldn't believe, because when you're actually someone who can write to any sort of degree and you're just a little bit even above someone else, that was the reason I got the job that I have today, where I get to comfortably work from home largely, and got to have so many experiences and got to meet cool people and got to just learn so many things about social media, marketing, branding. I got all of those different opportunities because I got this job. And literally what pushed me over the edge was the fact that I was a writer and they were looking for a writer. And sure, yeah, nowadays they could just say, oh, I'm just using ChatGPT, chat. And I can say the ChatGPT for a second. I don't know why. But yeah, but they still need someone to look it over. Like, they would still need somebody to go and even come up with the idea to input it into the chat at the very least, But it gives you the opportunity to learn more about yourself, because you're writing, if you're writing fiction, especially, you're writing characters, you're learning about their psychological profiles. You're thinking about, okay, what part of myself do I want to put in these characters? And you might reveal parts of yourself that you never realized before. Like one of the big things that I learned writing Spaceborne was I was writing the story and I had so many internal feelings of my own that popped up, because for Spaceborne specifically, I was like, no matter what version of the book I was writing, I was always writing it as somebody who was, Soraya, the main character. She was a prisoner. She was kept on a prison ship by her own aunt. She was just traumatized, not able to fully express her feelings, her emotions. It was one of the reasons I couldn't get into her voice very well, was because she was so closed off and protecting herself. And then I realized, is this how my friends feel about me? Is this how my friends feel about me when they're trying to ask me how I am? And I, had a very abusive, toxic upbringing. If you've known my content since pre the pandemic, you would know this. And I realized, okay, I feel this way about my character, because I feel this way about myself. I can't even fully dive into my own emotional state because I feel so similarly to her. I can't access her feelings or her emotions because she won't let me, because she's closed off and she's traumatized and she doesn't want to let anybody in because she's been betrayed by her literal own family. That's how I felt in my given situation. I had, my druggy aunt with her druggy boyfriend, and I felt trapped in my own home. And that subconsciously to me was the basis of Soraya being imprisoned by her own aunt, was because that's how I felt. And it wasn't, I couldn't fully access her voice until I came to that own realization with myself, was that this is how I feel. I can express her emotions, get into her voice now, because I understand her on a deeper level, because I understand myself on a deeper level. And writing, storytelling, and artistic pursuits will reveal things about yourself that you never even fully imagined about yourself. And you only achieve that through actually doing things scared and messy and starting early and getting the words down. And then you learn, hey, I wrote this character and it's got a piece of this piece of my heart. It's got a piece of this part of my brain. And that's sometimes why writers and creatives can get really, just up their own ass about getting critiques or getting, just negative reviews and different things like that, or having people say mean things about them because they're like, oh, I'm pouring all of myself into this and they didn't like pieces of me that I put into my characters or I put into this message. And they feel like it's a personal attack, when like those people who are critiquing don't even know that that's a part of you. They don't understand that necessarily. And that's going to happen with no matter what you do, is you're always going to have people who misunderstand you, even if they do know it's about your personal experience or your personal history, or if it's, a personality trait that you share with the character. People are always going to misunderstand you, but that's not a reason for you to go and misunderstand yourself.
Yeah. And you are, again, to bring it back to, you know, writing for helping other people feel understood. Maybe there are people who aren't going to get it, but there are probably going to be people who are, who read a certain line and go, "Oh, wow, like that resonates with me so hard." And I had like a therapy moment with my writing recently, which was self-revealing, and it was really funny. We were doing exercises and workshops on Discord, and we had this great person running workshops, Ren, and they told us to do this sort of speed writing thing of like, you know, what would I write if I forget the question now. I need to find that because it was great. It was something about writing without barriers, and just what would I say about this person if I could just say anything like in 5 minutes, and just like, you know, word diarrhea, just get it out. And I was working on a few different things. So I thought, well, I'm going to just sort of write this thing about I guess, this villain. And I wrote this whole thing that was just about me. And I was like, oh shit, I'm like reflecting with this villain and I didn't even know that. And I just realized something that was going on with me right now. Like, it was so funny. Like, it can really happen that way. I know I'm being a little vague with the specific thing because it was very personal and it's actually not going to get into my story, but I just wrote that and I was like, whoa, what just happened? And I'm actually channeling this into my story subconsciously. And I just realized all of this stuff. And oh, I guess that's going to make my character a little bit more deep and interesting because I just realized a bunch of things about him too. So writing can be therapy.
Yeah, it really can be, like any artistic pursuit. That's why they literally have like art therapy programs and different things like that, because you're releasing something that is usually so internal and only stays in these two places, you know, in your heart and in your head. And I mean, that's like that is so accurate. Like, one of the things that I realized too about all of the media, honestly, that I consume is that I always end up gravitating towards the morally gray characters, or sometimes even the villains. And I never really have a character who's just like super righteous in what they're doing, and they have no, you know, they always have some sort of internal reason for what they're doing, and they always and it's not necessarily just because it's the right thing to do. I don't really find those characters just as compelling, honestly, and I was always wondering why that was. And I realized very very quickly, actually, I started diving into it, whereas I was like, okay, well, growing up, I always felt like I was the bad guy. I was always made to feel like I'm the villain. I'm the, you know, and out of my siblings, I'm kind of the black sheep out of everybody. I'm always the person who's stirring up drama and stirring up this and this and this, because I'm a type 8, which is specifically the personality for, what was it? Like, justice is a big thing with us. We always want things to be even and to be fair, and for people to get their justice when they do things that are wrong. But we also want people who are doing things right to do things right. And there's always, you know, I believe in karma, past lives, all of those different things. And so my whole thing is that I always like just had this huge fear of people judging me and making me feel like I'm the bad guy, because that's how I was always made to feel as a child. I was always made to feel like I was, you know, the outcast, the person who was just doing things as if I wasn't just pointing out that, hey, there's a problem here. Hey, someone's doing something messed up. And I always had that fear of just being painted as the bad guy for simply existing. I had a past life reading, and literally the girl told me, she's like, you feel guilty simply for existing because in your past life you got someone killed. And I was like, great.
There we go.
Thanks for all of that trauma dumped on me. And that past life, honestly, reading made so much sense. And I was like, but that's why I gravitate to all of these morally great characters, or all these characters who are doing things for kind of selfish reasons. Because I was always told, even when I did nice, kind things out of the kindness of my heart, I was always told, oh, you're doing it for this selfish reason. Oh, you're doing it for this. Like, I distinctly remember in the last place we lived, I had a roommate who accused me of doing my own laundry for like a week straight. They're like, I can't get my laundry done because all you do is your laundry and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I was genuinely like, you're screeching at me and I'm so confused. I have 2 laundry days out of the week, and I do laundry for me and my husband. What are you talking about? Lo and behold, at the kindness of my heart, I was moving my siblings' laundry. And they thought I was doing my laundry. I was like, no, I move, and I moved like my other roommates' laundry too, whenever they asked me, and they never asked me because they were a crazy bitch. But I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, saying that I was doing laundry for a whole week. I was moving other people's laundry out of the kindness of my heart, but you had to go and say that it was something selfish that I was doing. But that's why I always gravitate towards those characters who are a little bit misunderstood, who are doing things for potentially selfish reasons. But then also just because it's for the greater good, and other people, you know, will always shit on them and things like that. And I usually like the less popular characters. But being able to write characters like that and still allow them to get their happy ending, or have them be understood, or have them have moments where, you know, people can misunderstand them, but then come to a correlation with, okay, I misunderstood this character, you know, they deserve an apology, or they deserve to still have nice things happen to them, even if I don't personally like them, just because I misunderstood their messaging or their meaning behind things. Like, that always is something that I gravitate towards, that I end up writing, because it's personal to me, and it's the way that I personally have felt my entire life. And I never come to any of, yeah, it's cathartic. And I had never been able to have any of this sort of internal realization until I started consuming media, creating art, consuming art, and then realizing, oh, I have a type that I enjoy. And this would be why, like, psychoanalyzing my own consumption and creation of different art forms, and then going, okay, well, now mentally, what am I going to do about the fact that I feel bad for existing? Now I have to go to therapy, but now I know what to bring up to the therapist.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's probably one of the many ways that we interact well, too, because when I was growing up, I had a number of friends who always told me I was lying when I wasn't. So I always feel like I'm lying. Like, if someone says something to me, like, if someone hints that, like, oh, you lied about that, then I will immediately go, did I? And then I'll immediately feel like I lied. And it like, so I'll immediately be aware of it. Like, I am not a person who lies, but if someone like hints at it or thinks, then I'll go, oh my God, did I? And I'll immediately get really sketchy. So like, I would do so badly on a lie detector test because I would just believe that I did lie, even if I didn't, because I just had, and I realized that actually through, you know, writing and talking to people in the community and stuff. And I was like, oh, and I remembered that. I was like, I remember that time, you know, where for like 8 years straight, some of my best friends would tell me, like, you weren't really sick at home. You just like lied about it and wanted to stay home. And I was like, but I was sick, or maybe I wasn't. Yeah. Tirade about how writing reveals you. But, you know, just another recommendation of how important writing is and why it's a good thing to do, I think.
Definitely. And, you know, there's so many reasons to try, and there is so few reasons not to. Just the only reason is because you're scared, or because you're going to come up with a million excuses and call those excuses your reason, rather than the fact that you're making those excuses because you're scared. And it's like, it's okay to just admit that you're scared of feeling vulnerable and putting yourself out there in terms of your writing, or trying to find community. And we can go, oh, I don't have time because I have kids. I don't have time because I have a job. I don't have time because I have so many other things going on. And it's like, sure, yeah, we might not have time when we're trying to do things consistently, but you had the time to listen to this hour-long podcast. I think you have the time after this to
we see you.
Well, yeah, appreciate you for watching. But if you have the time to listen to this, then you probably have the time to go, hey, I want to actually pursue my dream that I've been thinking about. I want to go and see if this is for me. And if it's not, great, you get to find a new dream that you get to daydream about a little bit, and then listen to someone else's podcast to motivate you to do that thing instead.
And then maybe you can start your own podcast.
Yeah, maybe that's what you're supposed to be doing. You never know. But, you know, you have to be able to go and try, and you can't point the finger at all these other things and say that's the reason why you're not going and doing something that your heart is calling you to do. But in reality, you know, you could stay up maybe a little, 30 minutes later after you put the kids to bed. Maybe you could wake up 30 minutes earlier for work and just write it out on your phone. Maybe while you're on the toilet one of these days after a really big thing of mac and cheese when you're lactose intolerant. Maybe you're just typing it out on your phone. You never know.
And I think as we wrap this up, a good thing to say that, ties everything into a bow in some ways is that you are going to find people out there who, when you are thinking about writing, tell you like, here's the secret, here's the secret, or here's the trick. And here's what's going to like get you published in 5 weeks, or, crazy things like that. You're going to find a lot of things like that, and you're going to get those in your head. And I've seen them everywhere. People post this stuff on YouTube all the time, how you can get published in a year. Like, cut out the noise. The only thing to focus on is not being afraid, like we've been saying, and just do it. There isn't a trick. There isn't a secret. It's going to be hard. If it's for you, you are going to keep doing it. You already are a writer. If you're a writer, you're a writer. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But get ready for a road that is very difficult, but will help you grow in immense ways, inspire you, and inspire other people. And what could really be better than that?
Definitely. And I mean, it's hard because in some places we make it hard. We make it hard with the fear. We make it hard with our, overestimating how much we can accomplish in a set amount of time. We make it hard by saying, oh, this isn't good enough. I'm not good enough. And in reality, when you're first starting with something as creative and as passionate and as just impactful as being an artist, of creating, of being a writer, being an author, it doesn't matter how fast you do it. It doesn't matter how good it is when you're doing it. It doesn't matter how good you start, how quick you start, how slow you are at making progress. The only thing that matters is that you started, because you can fix all of those things later. You can go and become a faster typer. You can go and find new methods that work better for you. You can go and you can fix all of those other things. You can publish quicker. You can write quicker. You can write better. But you don't improve on anything if you don't have something to improve from. You need a baseline. You need a beginning, starting point. And the only way that you're going to learn what that is that you even need to get better at is by putting your foot out there, trying your hardest, and seeing if it's for you. Does it light you up on the inside? Do you just can't stop thinking about it? Do the words just flow from your fingertips? Or even if they don't, are you staring there and going, this is worth putting in the time, the effort, and the energy to? Because in reality, that's all that ends up mattering. It could, later on you can go figure out, okay, how do I get quicker at typing? Actually, is dictation for me? Am I using Google Docs or Google Word anymore? How do I go and find a writing community? There's all these other different steps that you can worry about later. But right now, all you need to do is, after you're done listening to this and you've subscribed, followed us on all of the platforms down below so we can give you more motivation and instructions for later, is either open up Google Docs, your word processor, whatever it might be, and just write some stuff down. Write down your characters, write down the plot that you've had lingering in your head, go write, part of an outline, just start on chapter 1, whatever it might be that's just been bugging and plaguing you, where you're like, I've been thinking about writing this book for forever. Whatever's been in your head, get it done on the page, see how it feels.
Please do, and maybe let us know how it felt. Let us know how you did. Tell us if you went and did some writing after this, because we want to know, and that helps with our inspiration journey, is helping other people.
Definitely. And yeah, if you're watching this on the visual version, there's the comment section right down below. You can keep this video open as you go and write some things out, and then comment down below how it's making you feel after the fact. And if you're on the visual version, or on the audio version, my bad, on Spotify and things like that, make sure to go subscribe to us on YouTube at The Writing Podcast. Or
so you can see our lovely faces.
The Writing Craft Podcast. Excuse me.
We're writers here. All right. Well, I think this was fruitful. My usual conclusion of, I think we covered a lot. I love it. It was a great conversation. And hopefully everyone listening got something out of it as well. I had fun discussing with you, Jenna, as always.
Yes, I hope we have tons of new writers who are going to be following us along for more episodes to come, because we are actually going to be not really fully doing seasons. We're going to be starting to do weekly episodes as often as we can, and that means we're not going to be taking a break or only uploading during the fall and winter months, but we're going to keep this truck going all year long as we can.
It's going to be a little more topical too, sort of on time rather than so yeah, you won't hear about our projects months after they've been released, so hopefully that's something that you appreciate.
Yeah, so make sure to subscribe, like our stuff, follow us on the links below, and we're going to catch you guys in the next one. And hopefully in the next one we have a bunch of new writers who already have some new outlines, some new character sheets done, or some chapters written by them.
Fingers crossed.
You can do it. We believe in you.
We do.
We'll see you guys in the next one. So, bye!